Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic community. Individuals who have been willing to share their experiences of how they gained their sense of identity and sense of belonging. And I say this every week, and every week I've been proven right that we've got a very special guest. And our guest this week is Aloya JD. And he is the author of a book called Menace in My Blood. And he's also the editor of Sickle Cell News and World Reports, which is a dedicated publication about what's happening with sickle cell. So I'd like to just say a very big welcome to Aloya today and ask him our usual first question. Can you tell me what it was that gave you your sense of identity and belonging when you were growing up?
Thank you very much. My name is Ayoola Olajide. I'm speaking from Lagos, Nigeria. My sense of identity is highly mixed up with my being diagnosed with sickle cell at the age of 2.5. That was in 1966 or so. And growing up, I'm feeling very, very different from the rest of the family. By the way, I was born into a very large family. My father had 6 wives and 31 children. And we lived together with an uncle who also had the same number of wives and about the same number of children. Among all of us, 60 children, there were only 2 of us with sickle cell. From my own mom, 8 children. I was number 7 and the only one with sickle cell anemia. On the other side, I was just like 2.5 years older than her. She also had sickle cell anemia. So growing up, feeling different, looking different was not an easy thing. And sometimes being stigmatized, sometimes being laughed at, you know. I was always with my other twin sister, let me call her my twin sister. We're actually cousins, but the only 2 with sickle cell in that large family. We were the 2 always been, an SOS would go out about us to the family. Oh, they need blood. Ayo needs blood. Deola, that was her name, Deola, she was Deola. Deola needs blood, Ayo needs blood. Every time the message would go out to the family, to the extended family, that the 2 of us or separately needed blood. It wasn't easy growing up that way. Up to today, my identity is still mixed up with living with sickle cell anemia from that age. I didn't realize it until I was about 12 years of age, though. I only knew that I was different from the rest of the family, always being ill, always being hospitalized, always being transfused with blood, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
So it was quite something that out of all of your brothers and sisters and your cousins as well, that you were there was only 2 of you who had sickle cell in the family.
Yeah.
Which was expressed, as it were. Now, and you said about how the family rallied together to give you blood to help, but you were always viewed as the sickly one, the one who required more assistance. Was that right?
Yeah. And always needing blood. The family did not understand why we were always short of blood. So it was mixed with cultural interpretations. It was mixed with calling us bewitched children, calling us spirit children, there's a word in Yoruba or in Igbo language called Abiku. In Igbo, it's called Ogbanje. Spirit children who came into the world to punish their parents for whatever sins, and who went back, who died early in life, so that the crushing blow is when they die. And when they are alive, they really trouble the family, the finances, family finances, you know, quite a lot of trouble, especially for the mom who runs helter-skelter looking for reprieve. So it was mixed. They didn't know that it was because of sickle cell that we were always being short of blood, being tired, having certain physical features, which was not a common feature in the family. So that was it. Thank you.
So it was, you were viewed on by some, not by everyone, but by some as almost like a curse on the family, draining.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Only our mothers knew that we were not what they thought that we were.
Yeah.
So a mother will also accept the child no matter what.
Yeah.
And the mom will not stigmatize the child for any reason. My dad once told me that sickle cell was something that ran in my mother's lineage, not in his own. That he had nothing to do with it, which was very strange. Yeah. Yes.
So although they knew about what the condition was, they didn't understand.
They did not understand.
They didn't understand what it was.
And neither did we understand it until I was in my teenage, before I started looking for information about this thing that made me different, always sick, always in pain, always tired, always having a headache, and so on and so forth. Thanks.
It's really interesting because when, I suppose, from someone growing up in the UK, and when we hear about sickle cell, oftentimes the things which we think trigger sickle cell, a crisis, is a change in weather and things like that. So when I hear about you being in Nigeria, where my perception is that the weather is pretty good most of the time, right? It's kind of like, I suppose it's my own ignorance to think that what is it that's triggering the sickle cell from happening, if that makes sense.
Well, not really, not really. Tropical weather, yes. But there are places in Nigeria where it's kind of temperate, kind of. There's a place called Jos in the northern part of Nigeria. I went there for the first time in 1981. I was 17 years of age at the time, and there was this immediate feeling that the weather has changed from what I was used to in Lagos. So I spent about a week in Jos, Plateau State, and I was miserable all the while because the weather was colder than what I was used to in Lagos. So all throughout my 7 days of staying there, I was having joint pains. I was having not serious pain, but enough to make me uncomfortable, enough to make me feel very bad about myself. And even here in Lagos too, sometimes we have fairly cold weather, not like cold like your England, not like cold of America. Sometimes we have fairly cold weather from around July, May, June, July, and that is usually the time I have my very mild crisis, pain crisis. I usually have crisis around that June, July, August because of the weather. Otherwise, for the rest of the year, I'm okay. So the weather has, I think cold weather is not, at least for myself, I can talk for myself, cold weather has not always been good for me.
Okay, no, that's really good for that explanation, that clarity. So you mentioned that kind of like up until the age of 12. When was it, when you were 12 that you found out that you had sickle cell? Because you said that from 2.5 you were diagnosed, and you were,
yeah.
But when was it that they actually said you have sickle cell?
Okay, I was formally diagnosed in Lagos. 1965 or 1966. I was 2.5 years of age at the time. I actually presented with swollen hands, swollen limbs, swollen hands and legs. And then I was taken to the hospital, and my aunt, it was actually my aunt who was directly told, this child has sickle cell anemia, his genotype is SS. If his parents want to have more children, they should please come for counseling at the hospital. But at that time, my mom was already pregnant with the last born, number 8. So she didn't relay the message to them. So at the age of 12, I was at a place, a secondary school called Ogbomoso Grammar School in Oyo State of Nigeria. I was a boarding student. So, and it was compulsory for boarders to take part in what is called country trek. We call it country trek. We are waking up very early in the morning, around 5 a.m. And we had to run around the whole town. It was a distance of about 9 kilometers on empty stomach. So, and it was a yearly thing at the grammar school then. I know they don't do it anymore. But when I was there in I'm talking of 1976, yes, around January or February 1976, I took part in the cross-country race. I actually finished the race. But by the time I was at the finishing point, I was no longer myself. It was like I was depersonalized. I wasn't aware of myself anymore because something was happening within me, which I didn't know, which I could not define, which I could not hold. So when I reached the finishing line, by that time, I had started feeling serious pain within my body, within my limbs, all over my body from head to toe. I was having serious pain, but I felt depersonalized kind of. It was as if I was having pain somewhere and still moving forward with the country race, still jogging forward and moving on along with my mates. I wasn't aware of my mates. I was just slightly aware of them. It was like I was all alone in the world. So at the finishing point, I just felt that the pain became so much that I squatted. I could not squat. I could not sit. I could not stand. I could not continue to move forward. But I knew I was at that point where I had finished the 9-kilometer race. So at a point, I just squatted, and I had sharp pain in my back and buttock. So because of that, I lunged forward, and then I fainted.
Oh my!
The next thing was maybe about 9 hours later, I looked up and found myself in hospital, and I found blood. I was being transfused with blood. And then a male nurse came around and said, Mr. Jesse Owens. I remember actually what he called me Jesse Owens. I didn't know who Jesse Owens was. I said, I'm not Jesse Owens, I'm Ayoola. And he said, well, you took after the Jesse Owens, the runner. I said, well, so how did I come here? I said, oh, you were not aware that you were brought here in coma. I was in a coma. And I said, so what happened? He said, well, they brought you from school, and immediately we ran some tests. The results are not yet here, but the doctor will soon come around, and I'm sure we'll know what is wrong with you. So I found I was receiving blood, and he went away. Then an hour later, the doctor came and said, oh, we finally found out what is wrong with this little boy. I was just about 12 years of age at the time. And I said, oh, you found out what's wrong with me? I felt relieved that, okay, at long last, I could have named what ailed me. I knew I was different from my mates in the house. So he said, oh, you have sickle cell disease. You have sickle cell anemia. I said, oh, okay. So that means you treat me and I will no longer have it. He said, no, it's a lifelong issue. You have to live with it. It has to be managed one way or another. You have to live with it for the rest of your life. That was when I first heard that word, sickle cell anemia.
So you were 12 after, I don't want to call you Jesse Owens, but after you did your Jesse Owen and you did your run, that was when it manifested in you fainting and going into a coma.
It had been manifesting long before that. Yeah. I was always having tiredness and very little pain, but not severe bone pain crisis until it was triggered by that country race.
Yes. So how did that make you respond now that you had a name to it, before it was sickness, now it's an actual name, you've got something to go by. What did that trigger in you?
It triggered in me a huge curiosity to know more.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that doctors didn't have any time to sit down, to sit a patient down and start asking questions. I had a million questions in my mind. So, but well, I had to finish secondary school before I could go into researching about sickle cell. I was at a school called I was 16 and at a school called Kwara State College of Technology
Mm-hmm.
in Ilorin, Kwara State. I was studying for my A levels there, but I more or less neglected my studies and focused on learning more about sickle cell. They had a very big library and big books on biology, from which I learned a lot about sickle cell. Most of the information I read there was not palatable.
Mm-hmm.
Early death, not living to their productive years, and but whether I learned, whether it was negative or not, I wanted to learn more, and I continued studying, and reading, and learning about sickle cell at the library. Sometimes I would be there for hours on end, reading up on what ailed me. There was a particular phrase that really got me. It says, there's just a little there's just a very little problem with sickle cell. It says the difference is say where you are and stay where you are. You know, when you say where you are and stay, it's just a question of T, that word stay, between say and stay. So
Mm-hmm.
say where you are and stay where you are. That phrase really got me. So it was just a very small mutation within the gene between say and stay that
Yeah.
got me where I was at the time. Thank you.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. That T, because anyone who
Mm-hmm.
knows about the genetics of sickle cell will know that it's a single point mutation which causes the variation, the mutation which causes sickle cell. Yeah. So it is just like the stay and the say, the difference that
Exactly.
T, you know.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think that it can have such a impact, a
Mm-hmm.
potentially detrimental impact. But you earlier on, you had mentioned about the fact that you had been sick throughout childhood. How did that impact on your education? Were you able to go to school regularly like other children? Because I know you were just telling us how you were studying for your A levels, but how had it been up until that point? Had it impacted how your attendance at school and how were you treated?
Okay, yeah. In primary school, in primary one, I was always having this headache. I would say from primary one to primary two, for those 2 years of schooling, always having severe headache. So much that many times I had to stay at home to be treated or in hospital to be
Mm-hmm.
treated. And usually when coming back from school in the afternoon, I was always be feeling so tired, feeling so fatigued that going to school became kind of added labor for me. It was tedious going to school.
Mm-hmm.
It academically it didn't affect me, but being present in school was always a huge task for me. I remember I was always referred to as a truant because I was always absent from school. So it really impacted on my school attendance, but not on my academic performance. It never did that. In primary one and two, I was known as a habitual latecomer and habitual truant. So sometimes I will get to school and after several days or weeks at home, and the teacher would think that it was just because I didn't like coming to school, and I had to be dragged to school by a relative or by my mom. The moment they deposited me in school, they will go back home, not remembering to tell the teacher that, oh, this child has been ill. Kindly go softly on him. So the teacher would assume that it was just unwillingness to come to school, And my mates will gather around me and sing me a song about a truant not wanting to study. And after that, the teacher would get some of them to get two of them. One will hold me parallel, will hold my arms. The other will hold my legs parallel to the floor. And then the teacher will flail at me, with a whip. And that will cure my aversion to going to school, my so-called aversion for some time. So it really, really impacted that. And because of all that, I didn't like going to school. Sometimes I would be so tired in class that I would sleep off, and my mates would light a paper cigarette and put it in my mouth, and the thing would almost burn my mouth before I woke up.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing would wake me up. So that was my experience going to school. After primary school, the thing tapered off a bit, but even in secondary school, I was always being admitted to hospital, always becoming short of blood and being treated either in the boarding house or at home. So, but school attendance was a very big issue for me, but not academically. Thank you.
So because you were missing school, how did you keep up academically? Were you an avid reader? What was it?
I don't know. Some people say people with sickle cell are often very, very brilliant. And I can tell you that I was. I was among my result for A level was among the best of the year. Even though at that time, 3 weeks to the exam, I had a severe, severe crisis. Sometimes when I try to recall it, I have tears in my eyes. But I still went back to school being ill prepared for the exam, for the Cambridge A level that we did at that time, being very, very ill prepared. But I still did very well enough to have direct admission to the university. A lot of people have told me, even doctors. I was at a conference just this year in Ibadan at a University College Hospital Ibadan. And the doctor asked a question of the professor who was handling the thing, that why are they always or usually brilliant? And there was really no answer for it. Even the chairman of, I've asked the question of several doctors too at one point or the other, that I meet a lot of children with sickle cell who are extremely brilliant. They don't go to school regularly as their mates, but when they do go, they are at the top. During the Sickle Cell Day this year, a lady in her 60s, in her mid-60s, told the audience of usually being absent from school and going back always first. So I don't know, maybe there's a need for research on that angle. Why are they always brilliant? Yes.
That's something that we should really have a look at.
I'm telling you, it should be researched. Yes.
Yeah, because that sounds really really interesting. So you got into your reading, as you said, you did really well in your A levels, but half of the time you were spending looking about at the impact of sickle cell, understanding what sickle cell was. So how did you then develop that further? What was it that clearly people didn't understand it very well because they were still saying about bewitched child and all of these kind of things? How did you go about trying to share your voice, let other people know what sickle cell is?
Sickle cell made me to love reading, because many times I was usually the only one at home while recuperating from an illness. So I'll get books around me and read. Maybe that reading itself was part of the whole thing, because any child that reads, that loves books, is sure to perform very well in class. So at a very young age, I was exposed to books, which I devoured like anything. So even in hospital, anytime I was able to read anything, I'll tell them to bring me books, story books, and then I'll read those things. Reading also helps me to to not feel the pain so much. It's like a kind of therapy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So doing all that, knowing that books were my friends, helped me to reduce that the feeling of pain. So it really helped me a lot. Now, after um, please repeat the question. I'm lost, kind of.
No, well, that's fine. You got to the point of telling
Okay.
us about how your love for reading, because it was
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
like a therapy for you. But then what I
Okay.
was asking as well is, because you've read so much and yet around you there was so
Okay.
much people who didn't know about sickle cell, what did you do to try to
Yeah.
help people understand sickle cell?
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. Um, in 1987, I was working with my brother at his office, and I used to go through newspaper articles, and sometimes I felt that the articles were dull and should not have been even published at all. That I could always do better.
Mhm.
I could write better, and so on. So I began to write for a newspaper which accepted me as a columnist. And then later on, I decided to write something about my experience living with sickle cell. I submitted it to a very popular weekly tabloid in Lagos, and it was accepted and serialized for about 5 weeks. That was 1987. So in that write-up, I related how living with sickle cell has impacted on my educational life, on my work life, employment, just a general idea of how living with sickle cell was. Do I remember the title well now? The Pain of Living with Sickle Cell. That was the title. I still have
Mm.
the article. I still have the, the publication with me right here.
Mhm.
So it was at that point I began that my sickle cell advocacy actually began. I wrote it, and I earned my first income, my first real income, big income in life through those serialized articles.
Wow.
So it really launched me into more writing. It was just a few years later that I wrote my own book, my autobiography about living with sickle cell, called Menace in My Blood. So, and that was how my advocacy began to grow wings. And it also led me into publishing this magazine called African Sickle Cell News and World Report, which I still do up till this moment. Thank you.
So it was partly because of the serialization of kind of like your story about living with sickle cell that you then went on to do your publication. So African Sickle Cell News and World Reports.
Yes, even before that, while doing my master's degree in psychology,
Uh-huh.
I always wanted to focus on sickle cell. So
Mm-hmm.
for my master's degree thesis, it was a thesis on, the title was Anxiety and Depression in Sickle Cell Anemia, which
Right.
helped me to relate with other people living with sickle cell, to gauge their anxiety and depression levels as a result of living with this condition.
Mm-hmm.
So I was to go for PhD too, with an intention to do more on sickle cell from the social and psychological angle. But at the end of the day, I did not complete my PhD. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Wow, wow, wow. So tell me, I'm very interested in the research which you did. Okay. What was the main finding that or what were some of the findings that you got from that research into the psychological impact?
Okay. Um, it's about 38 years now.
Hmm.
It's about 38 years now. So
Hmm.
I just have a sketchy recollection of the research results.
Hmm.
Well, the first one is that I used the Taylor's Manifest Anxiety Scale and Beck's Depression Inventory for my research. Concerning anxiety, it was found that, well, we have some degree of freedom or whatever it was called in statistics at the time. It was found that people and the parents having children with sickle cell have a higher level of anxiety than the general population. And that according to my research, that people living with sickle cell, their depression scores were also much higher than the general population, at least among those that I use as my subjects and the control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically what it was.
Okay, fantastic. So clearly demonstrating a link with the illness and social perception and how they saw themselves and how they felt about themselves, etc. So can you give us a bit of a flavor of the kind of articles which you publish in your sickle cell news and world reports? What is it that what is the main objective of your publication?
Can I show the latest edition of the magazine?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. First of all, this is my book.
Okay.
It's my book.
What's in the blood?
And some of the latest editions. This is the, is it clear? I hope it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
This is the July to September edition.
Yeah.
And because of my own experience living with this condition, I decided that it should be free online, absolutely free online. And it has been free. It has been like that for many years.
Fantastic.
This is the latest edition. This is the current one, the October to December 2024 edition. It's also free online. Just go there and download free of cost. And that is what I do. As to the stories, we have done a lot. This particular edition deals with pulmonary hypertension in sickle cell, the story of an adolescent who early in life turned up with that complication, which is very rare in children. But she has it and she continues to live her life as best as she can. Just a 17-year-old. We've done stories on stroke as a complication of sickle cell. By the way, I'm the president of the sickle cell club in my locality. And today is our regular monthly meeting. I couldn't stay for the meeting just to prepare myself for this meeting.
Yeah.
So we have children there who are with stroke, who are with we have adults there who are with AVN, vascular necrosis. We have all sorts of conditions there. And one of our parents, I met her just about a month ago, and I asked her, "You've not been coming to our meetings regularly?" And she said, "Well, it's not easy for her to attend our meetings because whenever she does that, she comes away feeling bad about her own child." Yes, she has seen people who have survived, people like me, others in their 50s and 60s and 40s. But for her own child, she feels kind of anxious, going back to my anxiety and depression and sickle cell. She said that was why she could not keep attending the meeting because her child is just about 4 years old. And when she hears the doctors talk about the condition, she feels afraid for the future. I always try to encourage them, no, you don't need to just do your best, take your medication regularly, always attend the clinic, your clinic appointments, and leave the rest to God. The Lord that saw us through will also see your own children through. And that's how it has been. We've done stories on a lady who had 12 pregnancies and 11 miscarriages, having only one surviving child. And she decided, well, that will be the end of it. No more pregnancies. I'll just face this one child and continue with her life. And I asked her, what if your husband, we are Nigerians, we're Africans, we love children.
Yeah.
Especially a man loves to have a male child. And I said, well, what if your husband decides to have another wife so that that one can give him a male child? And she said, oh, please let him go ahead. She doesn't mind. She's through with getting pregnant. 12
Mhm.
pregnancies and only
Yeah.
one child surviving. We've done a lot of stories from the human interest
Yeah.
angle, and I can't begin to enumerate them here. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's really telling what you've just said. Um,
Thank you.
it's showing the human interest and showing the
Yeah,
real impact on individual lives, and how we need to know about these stories if we're going to try to advocate and work for a better solution. So what about for yourself? Because this is about your sense of belonging in terms of, as you just said, um, wanting a child to survive beyond you. What about you? Have you got a family? And have, in choosing a wife, did you think to yourself, "Well, I have sickle cell. What's the prospects?"
okay, thank you. At the time I was growing up, getting to be an adult, a young adult, and having a girlfriend, being in love, falling out of love, and all that. No one ever told me that, no doctor at least ever told me that, oh, you could also transmit this condition to your own children.
Mm,
No one told me that.
mm,
So um, I had this girl I was moving with. I was doing my master's in Ibadan at the time, and she was working as a secretary in Lagos. At the point where we were talking on the phone, and all of a sudden, I had this sudden sickle cell crisis, pain crisis. And that's one of the things that frightened me most about sickle cell. We are talking now, you just bend down for a moment, and all of a sudden you are in severe pain.
mm,
So we were talking on phone. It was not at the time of GSM. We were
mhm,
talking on the landline phone, and I had sickle cell pain. I dropped the phone, and I was in hospital for 2 weeks. So when I came back to Lagos, she called the house. She called the house a million times. That's an exaggeration, though, to try to find out what had happened to me. And I told my cousins, please don't tell her anything. Don't tell her I'm in hospital or anything like that. So when I returned to the house after being discharged, I called her and she broke down crying. Where have you been for the past 2 weeks? Where have you been? Where have you been? I told her, okay, this weekend I'm coming to Lagos. Let's meet, let's talk. By that time, the idea of having her as my wife had crystallized in my mind. So already by that time, our parents knew one another. Um, we knew we were going to get married. Nothing could stop us getting married.
mhm.
And then when I got to Lagos, the idea, I just had a brainwave. You are SS, and you have not even tried to find out our own genotype. And we've been moving together for about 4 years, and we already intended to get married. So I said, well, can we go to the lab? I need to know your genotype. When we were going to the laboratory, we were arm in arm, you know, um, laughing, talking, gisting. People were looking at us, this must be lovers. And we were
Mhm.
really true lovers. So people were looking at us, people were honking their horns, and we were just moving as if, you know how it is when you are
Yeah.
really in love. So we got to the lab, we waited for maybe 1 hour, the result came out. The laboratory specialist actually handed the results to me. I opened the envelope, and when I found what was there, a cloud formed over my face. And she
Mm,
said, Ayo, kilode. Kilode means, what is the matter? What's going on?
mhm.
She said, Ayo, kilode, kilode. I said, I have nothing to say now. Let's go back home. Let's just go back home. But she knew something was wrong, and I didn't tell her at that point.
Mm,
When we were going back home, I was walking maybe 500 meters in front.
mhm.
We were, when going to the lab, we were arm in arm. But when going back home, I was just complete. I was not myself anymore. So she was walking behind me, but she knew something was, I was just disorganized on that day. I was completely unaware of her. I knew my plans had been rubbished by sickle cell. So we got home. I sat her down and told her, look, I am SS and you are AS. How can we continue with this relationship? I knew what I had gone through. I knew what my mom, what my parents had gone through. How can I replicate the same thing? In my mind, there was not even that chance that, oh, we could, that it was just 50% chance. In my mind, it was 100% that she was going to have a child with. At that, I didn't know the probability, the statistics of it. But even then, even if I knew it, at that time, there was no prenatal diagnosis in Nigeria. I'm talking of 1987, 1988. So I told her, well, I just cannot continue with the relationship. She broke down crying. She said, why did you not tell me in the first week or in the first month or in the first year? You are not telling me at this point when we had arranged to be married, when both our parents knew we were going to get married. Why not tell me within the first few days or weeks that you have this condition, so I will know my options and what to do? Well, to cut a long story short, we did not get married just because of this SS condition, because of the possibility that we could have offspring or offsprings, we could have children who are full-blown with sickle cell, just like me. And she actually wanted us to continue with the thing that even though there was that risk, it was possible. I told her, well, the only way to continue is if we don't have children. And she said, no, this is Africa. How can we be married and not have children? At the end of the day, we didn't. And I was serious about it. That, look, we can get married just for companionship, no children. But she thought I was being, my mind was being beclouded because I was in love. He said, 20 years down the line, your age mates will be having children, their children will be grown up, and then you will blame me for not allowing you to have children. So at the end of the day, we didn't get married just because of that. So I eventually got married, but the first thing I did was find out the genotype even before the relationship became serious. So when I found out she was AA, I said, well, we could continue.
Okay.
So I have 3 boys and they are doing very well.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you know what? That was really powerful because you took a decision. You made a decision based off your experience. You didn't want necessarily for your children to have to suffer in the same way that you would or have in the past, you know. And in all of what you've been doing in raising the awareness of these stories, of the I say stories, but they're lived experiences. They're experiences of individuals who have suffered. But I know that there's joy as well. I know that there is joy. But can you give us just a sense of I should really open up for questions from the viewers, but can you give us an example of, you know, sometimes people paint sickle cell as really being very debilitating, which it can be. But what's the joy that comes from sickle cell? What would you say is the joy of sickle cell? If you can give an example of one.
Well, people look at sickle cell in general terms. They don't look at it in individual terms. It's an individual condition. It doesn't affect everyone the same way. And I can tell you, I give glory to God. For myself, I've never had any surgery related to sickle cell. Never. And I know people who are much younger, who are old enough to be my children, who have had series of surgeries, series of complications, series of it can be very bad, I know. But for me, despite being SS, no, and for the past 20 years, no blood transfusion whatsoever. So I always feel grateful to God every day. I always compare myself with what others are going through. And I feel happy that I'm able to do my job, able to expand awareness and sensitize people about this preventable, 100% preventable health condition. And thank God for science. AS and AS, even AS and SS can get married today if they have the means for prenatal diagnosis, for pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, and all the rest of it. So I feel joy in being able to tell people about our lived experiences, including my own. I feel joy in being one of the advocates for this condition on my continent and in the world. And I particularly feel good that none of those complications has touched me. It's just the grace of God, not my own doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have to say thank you. You're 100% right. The fact that you're able to spread the word, the fact that you're able to advocate and to help others to see the potential possibilities that they have available to them. And it's through the likes of the publications that you do and the book which you write. What inspired you to write your book, Menace in the Blood?
Yeah. I discovered this creative writing ability within me. And I know that stems from reading a lot. I used, as a child, as a teenager, I used to read a lot. So a time came in my life, I said, oh, it was just like a brainwave, like something that hit me. Just like when I started this Sickle Cell News publication. They said, why don't you write something about what you've gone through having sickle cell? Why don't you just do it? I've had my own experiences too as a child. But that one that I've said about before, that I've mentioned before, constant blood transfusion. Every 3 or 4 years, I used to be transfused with blood. So going through secondary school, going through primary school, university, there was a time I had pain crisis just localized to my head alone, just my head. Severe pain crisis to my head alone. I've also had pain crisis from my neck down, with only my head spared. I've had very, very severe ones. I said, oh, I need to put something down on paper and let it be a lesson unto others. Let others read. Reading will help people to make up their own minds if they want their own children to go through similar experiences, or at least it can prepare them for whatever lies ahead. So to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And then it is always better to be prepared rather than not knowing anything about this condition, not even knowing that you also carry it in you as a carrier. When a lot of people have sickle cell trait, don't even know that they do. And that is where the issue lies. Without sickle cell trait, there won't be any sickle cell anemia. So it is just to warn those who have the trait, who are healthy, 100% healthy like any AE, that, well, you need to know your genotype and its implications for the oncoming generations. Thank you.
Thank you. I really just want to say a really big thank you for all of your candid answers that you've given and given us an insight into your experiences and how you're working tirelessly to change the narrative, reclaiming the narrative. It's interesting that in the UK, it's also Black History Month this month, and the theme for Black History Month now in October is reclaiming narratives. And the way in which you have reclaimed the narrative of sickle cell disease in putting the realization of what's happening to individuals, but helping individuals to take ownership of their sickle cell, I think is absolutely brilliant. Really is brilliant. I'm going to ask my final 2 questions now, and they are kind of like opposite ends of the same question. And the first of those questions is, what advice would you give to your younger self? That would be question number 1. And question number 2, or part 2, is, what do you think your younger self would look at you now and say, wow?
That's a very strange question. Can you try and clarify, please?
All right. So in the first one, what advice? Let's take them one at a time. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Advice to my younger self?
Hmm. Or to,
Well, I would say, um, life is not always smooth.
mhm,
There'll be down moments and there'll be up moments. Things are not always the same each day. Take the day as it comes. Take the day as it comes. People will disappoint you. You will disappoint people, but always do your best. Always do your best,
mhm,
and keep away from maligning others. Keep away from negativity. That's what I would tell my younger self.
mhm,
As to
mhm.
the second question, what would my younger self think of me now or something?
Yeah. What if they were to look and say, "Wow, I
Yeah,
didn't."
if the Ayoola at 12 years old or 16 years old to see me now, we will say, "Oh, brother, you've come a long way. You've really done very well for yourself. I never knew I would come this far. The doctor once told me I wouldn't live to the age of 25.
Mm,
Today, I'm looking to my 61st birthday, 61, 61. So that my younger self would have been surprised that we have lived so long,
mhm.
and it is all to the glory of God. Thank you.
Thank you. Oloa, I just want to say a big, big thank you for sharing your story, and not just for sharing your story, for all the work which you're doing. In, as I said earlier on, in bringing awareness and in continuing to bring awareness free for everyone to be able to access, learn, and understand, and to educate themselves about the lives which people with sickle cell have, right? And what we can do to help and to find that cure or find those better treatments or to make their life easier than it currently is. So I want to say a very big, big thank you for all that
Thank you
you
too.
do.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
I'm just going
Thank
to
you.
let people know what's coming up next week. Um, so excuse me. Oh, sorry. So let me just share my screen. Sorry. And let people know that next week we have um, Rachel Quinlan, and she is going to be our guest. And she's a research nurse, a midwife in the Department of Infectious Diseases. She's going to be our guest next week for Belonging. And if you have missed any of the other Belonging interviews, please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging IAO, and you'll be able to see more interviews just like this. Um, I'm going to again plug the book, which is the Black PhD Experience. It's been out for almost a month now. It's available. If you go to this QR code, you'll be able to find more information about it, looking at the Black PhD Experience. And finally, I just want to say a big thank you to all of the guests. Thank you to Ola for today's um, interview, but to all of the other people who have given their time and shared their experiences of what it means to belong. Um, Without them sharing that, we wouldn't get a better insight and understand what it is that we can do to help people feel that they belong and show them that they do belong. So until next week, thank you very much for coming and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, here we go. Guy likes everyone at the server. Big bag. Gonna devour that. I need to bleach my eyes.